Welcome, good evening, everybody. This is Elan Vitae Magazine's EV Unfolds series, and I'm super excited to be here talking to a great group of people diving into this topic called Small Moments of Awe. And we're here with Tim Mansky and Michael Schultz of This Is Life Coaching and Shenna Driscoll Salvato of Elan Vitae Magazine, a fellow contributor and educator. And this whole conversation started between Michael Schultz and myself having a conversation about these small moments of awe. Michael, I read your article that you had written, and then you and I dove into this conversation, and it took us to all these different places of how awe comes into play in our lives, in our businesses, especially in this time right now where everything is changing. And what we thought was normal really wasn't that normal at all. And this new era we're living in just doesn't, there's no rule book anymore. And how this concept of awe really fuels us and has this ability to kind of ignite that life force within us. So I wanted us all to have this conversation and flesh this topic out and really bring about what it means to us from all different perspectives. So myself as a transformational coach, Tim as a photographer, yourself as a coach and fitness expert, and Shenna as an educator, really tap into all the different categories of how we like to distribute this and how it can benefit all of us. So why don't we start with you, Michael? How did this concept come out for you? What inspired you to write about small moments of awe?
Actually, it was big moments of awe that inspired me originally, Jennifer. So I guess we can start there. That awe is typically it's associated with grandeur. It comes down to a sense of wonder. And if you think about our world and where we find that sense of wonder, lots of times it can be associated with music and art and sport and a lot of different things. And it shows up in nature so readily. And for good reason, because there's this grandeur of scale in nature, right? Just naturally, you think about the cathedrals of nature like Yosemite comes immediately to mind. Mm-hmm. So that's where it started, is because Vista's life coaching is all about tapping into that sense of nature, right? So it started with the grandeur, and then the world changed. So it was all of a sudden we're at home, and so I just started to think and brainstorm with you and some other colleagues about how awe fits into that. And it was a very short journey to small moments of awe that it's right there in front of you each and every day. And so that was my particular journey to not the realization, because I think I already realized it from way back, but sort of a reconnection with the idea that awe can exist right outside your window. So anyway, that was my journey to small moments of awe and how we can find them.
Yeah, absolutely. What about everybody else? What is your relationship with awe? I'm curious.
Well, if I can chime in a little bit, I actually go back to Michael's blog, and he, one of the things he asked me about when he was coming up with it was, okay, come up with a photo of something small, something to focus on. And the shot that is in his blog is of a little mushroom, and the thing about it was one of those times where probably a couple years ago, I just, went outside my house with my camera and just walked around the woods for a day and was just shooting whatever came up. And what you would find just walking around in the woods would be just amazing. You get down, knees in the dirt, elbows in the dirt, down looking at stuff up close. And that it just brings a closeness to what you see and what you sense, and you come up with some really interesting stuff just looking around and exposing yourself to your surroundings. So I think just finding those little things and just looking at the details of them just brings an awe in itself. And when he was asking me a photo, it's like, I know where to look for something like that. So
small stuff.
it's pretty neat.
And then I would imagine just having that permanent representation of it extends that sensation and lets you share it. So as a photographer, what does that mean to you as you capture those things, first of all, and discover them for yourself, but when you revisit or look at it again or share it with somebody else, does it extend that feeling, or how does that affect?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, some of the stuff that Michael and I are working on right now, I've gone back and looked at stuff from 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and totally forgot about things. And you just look at it, it's like, oh yeah, that was that, and then you can refine it and look at it from a different perspective, from what you sensed then all the way, through the time periods of if you've revisited that place, or just seeing different things, similarities or differences between it and something else. It's just, you get those memories, but then you also get new experiences, from it, even though it's something that it's been, so long ago, it's still something that is fresh and in your mind, and you get that sense of wonder all over again.
I really appreciate that use of the word sense, because when I was thinking about it, the thing that really struck me was a sensation that's almost between worlds. And it seems to me to be a moment when time stands still and everything can kind of freeze in that moment, and I feel almost suspended. And it's a sensation that's very, I think, difficult to find in other situations or scenarios, but when I experience it, I know it immediately. It's not that I have to figure out what is this that I'm feeling. So that word sense, I think, is really fascinating.
Yeah, and appropriate. That's true.
Yeah, that's a great, what does it feel like? So sense and sensation are such great words. If you had to describe awe as emotions or something that happens to you physically, how would you describe it?
Well, I used the word wonder before, so that's a part of it. It's it can be for me a mixture of a lot of things, and one is that sense of wonder. I think there's a smallness in that, like just realizing that you're part of a greater picture, a greater whole, and whatever that means. Part of a greater whole in your community, a part of the greater whole in the world, a part of the greater whole in the universe. It all sort of descends on you at once, So there's that real smallness that shows up, and I think that's for me, that's part of it. For sure. There can be almost a sense of another very positive emotion, which is love. That shows up for me sometimes. And it's, I don't know, that's multifaceted for me. It's the love of what I'm looking at, because I do have that sense around nature that I'm drawn to it. I appreciate it. And just for what it is. So I have that. It's almost like a love. And then, interestingly, and I've done enough reading about it, I know I'm not the only one that experiences this in the face of awe, and it's fear. Sometimes, now, not fear of the mushroom necessarily that Tim took a picture of, but when it gets on that grand scale, it can be a thunderstorm, it can be a cliffside, it can be well, Tim took me up the cables at Yosemite, and that was definitely a fear-based experience. And things like that, I think it get mixed together for me. All these different emotions, all just being the central one.
Well, and I think also, with the word sense is also, it ties actually into your physical senses. So, I'm talking about, getting down and dirty, in the dirt and in the sand or whatever, and you're actually getting an experience with your surroundings, the feeling of being in there, as well as, smelling, musty dirt, and things like that. And then, hearing the sounds around you, it's either, bringing your heart rate up because you're getting all excited about it, or else it's calming you, and bringing your heart rate down, and you're, soothing you. So I think the senses is, not just, I guess, a sense in a little word, but also experiencing it. So
Yeah.
I don't know, that's how I describe it.
And it is such a visceral experience, right? When you think about the seeing, the hearing, the smelling, the tasting, the touching, and all of that, but also at the same time, I know for me, along with those physical sensations that I have, it's almost this, I feel it right here, right? I feel it in the center of my chest, and then it's almost like I feel it in this, in the space above my head as well. The other thing that, when you were sharing those stories about the mushroom and the fear, is also not only for me inspired by nature, but after having had what maybe seemed to be kind of a mundane experience with another person, but then I step away from that, and when I'm on my own, there can sometimes be this incredible sense of awe that follows that. That doesn't necessarily happen in nature, but it always surprises me when it does come about. But it's definitely the same feeling that I experience in nature, but that interesting connection between another human, and not really realizing it in the moment, but then say a few minutes later, and again, usually in something that's very mundane. So I'm really curious about the rest of your experiences with that, and with any patterns that you see, or any recognition of awe in those spaces.
The first thing I hear is connection in that. I don't know if anyone else is hearing that, but I also hear gratitude. So I think that's a part of it as well. That's something that often comes over me, and when I'm in a place of awe. But I think focusing on connection might be the right thread for us to follow here, because that seems to be central to what you just shared. Is you walk away from that interaction, and it may be in the aftermath, there's a sense of connection to that other person that was built, that was cultivated in the moment, but you were in the moment. So it takes stepping away from it to go, oh man, that felt so good,
I think that's so true. And it's something about it is so clean in that connection. I don't know about anybody else, but when I experience that sense of awe, I experience it as a sense of true openness, where everything else melts away, and my whole being, my heart, my mind, everything is really open and very present. And so I feel like the connection, whatever that is made, and even if during that time, during that connection and that moment, and also when I step away, it is a very clean connection. And I think that's what makes it beautiful and memorable, because so often our connections are muddied by so many other things, so much chaos in the background, and phone calls and noise, and demands and responsibilities, that awe really allows that just complete presence.
Yeah.
that allows cleanliness or clarity within those connections.
That's interesting, Jennifer. Awe can demand that of us, I think. Situations that bring us to that place of awe can demand that of us. When you step out on a precipice, when you're in the presence of something enormous, it's hard to not be in that place. You would have to be severely distracted by your phone in that moment to not notice. And then there are what we, the core of our conversation are these small moments of awe. And I see those as very different.
Mm.
I see those, and I take this from a thread that you just connected us to, which is this idea of the clean, the swept away, the mindfulness that you just summarized, right? So I think some places take us to that place where we could be distracted and we walk into a natural cathedral and we're just like, oh, wow. And it takes us to a place where now we're more mindful. Um, yeah, in everyday life, maybe it happens a little bit differently. I certainly think it happens in many ways in the reverse for me, where I have to have the mindfulness and the intention. So mindfulness being the intention to pay attention in a particular way, right? To focus, like Tim down on his hands and knees looking for the just the right shot, right? That's an intention to search for something that's beautiful and awe-inspiring. And so we have to go looking for it. Anyway, so I think it's that mindfulness component that you just brought up that's compelling.
Well, and I think that's true in daily life, wouldn't you say too? You know, I mean, there is something to be said for intentionally finding the awe within the things that seem mundane, or even, like you say, a point of fear or something that we'd rather not be experiencing. But when you back it up and pull in, oh, well, and get super present with it, it's, well, what is this that I'm experiencing and why? And what am I contributing to it? How did I contribute to getting here? And what am I getting out of it? And I think we have the opportunity to make small moments of awe out of everything if we have a process around it. Have any of you guys experienced that, where you've been able to find the awe in a moment that was uncomfortable or different or unexpected or undesirable in just day-to-day life or business?
Well, I think, I don't know if this sidetracks a little bit, but I think it's a combination of seeking it out as well as being receptive to it.
Mm.
So, you know, and sometimes there's a balance where it's in your face, which is okay. It's going to come out at you, but there's also the other side where, okay, you really have to look for something, and when you're looking for it, and then it just blasts out at you, it's like, whoa, you know. Or if it's just, you know, you're walking along not really looking for it, and but you're still receptive to it, it's still going to open you up. So I think when you were going back to, you know, talking about being open, I think the combination of both seeking it out as well as being receptive to it brings you to that open point where you're going to find something, you know, regardless of how big or how small it is, and it's still going to make a, you know, a difference to you, you know, on a personal level.
The other thing too that came to me hearing you talk about that idea of being receptive and the connections is almost a revelation, or the awe revealing something that is there, but in the process of becoming aware of the awe, there's, for me, this sense of something being revealed or something being inspired. And I think about that, thinking about Tim with the photography, and that the object is there, and perhaps the light is right at the exact moment, or you get that exact angle, and then that object is revealed to you in a way that you can capture it, that in any other circumstance it wouldn't have been the same. So yeah, revelation and revealing, I think, is something that really comes to me.
Yeah, because I mean, like what you described, I mean, there's times where I've gone to a location and either the light is flat or is just nothing's happening, and it's like, okay, I'm not even gonna, you know, take the camera out, and it can be a matter of just a minute or two, you know, where either there's clouds behind and a beam of light comes through or something, and it's like, bam, there's something right there. And, you know, 30 seconds ago, a minute ago, there was nothing. So there can be, you know, shifts that quickly as far as how you see something and how something, you know, portrays itself to you. So there's definitely, it's definitely an in the moment thing where you're there at the right time, or you're receptive to it to find find it there at the right time.
It's just a perfect metaphor for day-to-day life. As we encounter these things, we've all been forced to be really agile in these times of things being very different. And, that's a great, if you're approaching anything with those words that you just said, Tim, about, if you wait 30 seconds, the circumstances and the light and the things that are coming together are going to be different. And if you just be present and mindful and all of those things, then it will be revealed to you. There's a next step. There's something you've been looking for. There's whatever it is. So I think that's really, really applicable to everything we're living today.
Yeah. Yeah. Receptivity keeps coming out, right? This is the idea of being open. We use the word open, receptive. I would throw curious on the table as well. Just that curiosity about yourself, curiosity about your surroundings, curiosity about just the world. So turning up that knob, I think, is a key to that receptivity that we're talking about.
And perhaps patience too.
Yes.
Ooh, good.
Yes.
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 Like you said, even 30 seconds, having that sense of not forcing, but allowing, being patient, and being present to the process. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that makes me think of patience, like when we're going through changes ourselves, like the world's going through right now, or someone trying to change something about their lifestyle. That idea of staying the course, being patient, staying curious, staying open, all these things, and allowing it to come. And that sounds passive, and it's not. You're staying the course. If it were Tim, he's out there with his camera, he's at the ready, he is in that curious place, he's put himself in the right moment, he is staying the course, and it pays off. It might not pay off today, it might not pay off tomorrow, but it does come. And so that has
Absolutely.
a lot of parallels with changing.
Absolutely right. What are some that's a great point, Michael. Just allowing and, being there, showing up. These are all really great points you're making. What are some other practices that either you guys know of or use or have recommended to students or clients, or what other tools and practices encourage that patience, presence, curiosity, allowing that it takes to really be available to those moments of awe that we're open and inviting?
Wants to go first? Tim, you want to talk about that
Well,
from being out in the field?
Yeah, the first thing that popped up to my mind would be to experiment. Look at something new, and there's cases, I don't know. I guess what I'm thinking of is, I've been in situations where you're like in a big row of a dozen photographers looking at the exact same thing, and 11 of the 12 might get the exact same picture, but there's going to be one person who did something different, and all of a sudden that's like oh wow, that's the shot, and it's because they kind of stepped out and did something different, experimented, and basically took a different perspective. So, and going back to the situation where you're having a conversation with somebody and then stepping back and then rethinking it and saying, oh wow, well, it's kind of the same way with when I take a picture. You're in the moment and you might not even really think about it at the time when you're taking the shot. It's like, okay, that might be pretty cool. But then, you go back and look on, download it, look on your computer and like, wow, so it's kind of the same thing where if you experiment and kind of look at something differently or try to, make a point to look at something differently, then you always find these little nuances that help refine what, and tune what you do the next time you're there or the next time you're trying something or doing something. You just kind of, learn from your experiences and try something different.
And there's a really great metaphor, Tim, there for the days of the dark rooms and developing film, right? And
Yeah.
not realizing it in the moment, and then it's literally revealed when
Mhm.
when you see that image come forth. Huh. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating. It's like it steeps. It has to wait. It has to steep before it really is revealed.
Ooh, that's a juicy word. I love that. Say more about that. Steep.
I think where I was headed really is more along the lines of experimentation and curiosity again. But I mean, the steeping, if we stay with that thread, where it takes my mind is it goes back to patience, and it goes back to allowing yourself to experience what is there. So like steeping yourself in emotion rather than avoiding something or sweeping it under the rug, actually being intensely present and sitting with whatever comes. So to me, that's where that word goes for me, is that sort of sitting in that soup, that concoction that brings something else out, and it takes time and
Yeah,
it
I
takes
think
willingness.
absolutely. And I think just quite literally, even if you think of just steeping like a tea where it develops over time, it is infused and it becomes, and you can at any point along that spectrum of brewing your tea decide you want to drink it. And, some like it fully developed and some like it nice and, light. But it's really about what comes out of nothing when these two things combine, and then it gets better and better over time. It's also almost a maturation process, and I think there's something to that as well, of allowing a situation or a moment to mature and allowing it to become into its full fruition. And only you, who is a participant in it, can decide what is full fruition.
Mhm.
Right.
So the only other one that came to mind for me as we were talking about sort of things that can facilitate the awe and facilitate the curiosity and patience was consistency and ritual. And I think sometimes just having the consistency of maybe, like you say, just showing up, of just picking up your camera and going out every day, even though it's a rainy day, thinking I'm going to find a moment of sunshine, or every day showing up in your classroom or with your clients or on the phone. And it's how are you showing up? And sometimes just being in the right place at the right time because you consistently are there allows you to be the person that's there to experience that moment. So I don't know how that ties into ritual, but I always like to think of consistency more as a ritual than as a habit, because habit feels monotonous, where ritual feels very intentional. So I think there is something to that consistency of being available to let those moments happen.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. It's like growing anything, that's a ritual. The watering, the planting of the watering, the nurturing, the being there. You can't just walk away, or whatever you planted doesn't flourish. And so there is a ritual there. There's I like ritual much more than I like habit. Habit seems a little coarse,
Yeah.
what we're talking about here, whereas ritual seems inviting, soothing, You know, it's somewhere that you go very voluntarily. And so you know, autonomy is there. You're at choice. You're in a place that you want to spend time, that you choose to spend that time. And so that brings me back to mindfulness again. That's part of the cultivation here, is whether you're shooting photography or you're making lifestyle changes, showing up in that mindful way.
Mhm.
So not just showing up and being a body in the room, so to speak, but you're that person who shows up and uses that space in a very intentional way. And it can happen in a moment or it can take time, but it's not going to happen unless you're in that moment and really open to what might present itself.
One thing that comes to mind for me, Jennifer, when you were talking about exercises, and then this really ties into ritual, there's something that I've developed called dream stances. And I've written an article that's in Elan Vitae magazine that describes the process. But really, when I started to notice this reoccurrence of that moment of awe, both during my waking hours, but also during dreams. And this is where it really started. Having just a couple of powerful dreams, really having this visceral sensation of awe, and feeling like I wanted to somehow honor that and feel it again in waking life. And so just the general premise is to remember and think back to those moments. So I have 7 that I do, and I've created just a physical stance that I do that represents each of those sensations for me. And I do those in a sequence every morning, and that's my ritual. But when I do that stance, it brings me back to that space and that feeling. And I feel that helps me not only remember that moment of awe at that time, but it also helps me remember to be present and open to new ones that come along. So along those lines, I'm curious too about any of you with dreams. You've been talking about nature and physical space and daily life. How about moments of awe in the dream world for any of you?
Oh, that is an interesting perspective.
I haven't even thought about that.
I haven't given that much thought either. I certainly have experienced, like I'm sure the rest of you have, whatever's going on in my physical world makes its way into the dream world quite a bit. So it's almost like a manifestation of a sort. So I mean, that comes to mind. I don't know. What about the rest? What about the other 2 folks? Does it show up in a different way for you?
Well, as I think about it, I mean, I've had some recurring dreams where I've, pictured scenes of nature. I mean, there's one, plain as day to me, where it's this mountaintop and then there's this canyon on the side and everything. And it's almost like it's my own personal world, because it is something that I've dreamed about it, and I can envision, the rocks on the ground, the trees on the side, the water, the creeks flowing down there. And it's just in a dream world, but it is something that, seems so real at the time that I was awestruck, in the dream. And you wake up and you think about it and it and you can relive it. And I'm seeing it right now. I'm seeing the picture of that, landscape in a dream. So it's
so cool.
It is cool. I want to be there on the day where you walk into that spot and you actually see it for real.
Yeah.
It is out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I wish I had something like that to report. I do not.
Yeah, similarly, I mean, I feel like in a dream state, what I get out of those moments is similar. I get the revelation, I get the connection, but it's different. So I don't revisit so much or use dreams or recollection of dreams to connect to those moments of awe, but I get the awe from having made the connections or having gotten the symbolism from what came from my dream and being able to put it together. So just being able to remember and have that experience in a dream state and recognize it consciously later does create awe for me.
Mhm.
So yeah, thank you for bringing up that, Shanna. We'll have to connect to that article. That's such a great piece of content and such a great point. It's a great additional layer to the conversation.
Yeah.
So this is so much fun, you guys. I'm loving diving into these nuances of these topics with you. And unfortunately, we're going to wrap it up here, but I would love to end with just a quick question. If you had to state your most frequent source of awe in one word, what would it be?
Sunrise.
Mm,
Since I'm going to put one word, I just say sunrise. I'm
Yeah.
most awake, most alert. I'm a morning person, and that's just where it just seems to strike me.
I'll go with mountains.
Cool. Jen?
I'd say awareness.
Ooh. I think mine would have to be sunset. Nature in general, but sunset for sure. So Tim and I have something in common there on opposite ends of the spectrum. But the cool thing is that what we've seen here is that this one little moment can mean so much and last for so long if we connect to what it is and we're present and available to what the meaning is and can carry it throughout other layers of our life. So thank you all so much for diving into this topic and for allowing everybody that's listening to this to understand how these small moments and just these perspectives that we've brought out here due to this conversation are things they can take right now and put into play in their business, in their home, in their family, in their relationships, in their internal self-development work. So I hope you all have found this as valuable as I have. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope everyone else is finding this valuable as you listen as well.
Jennifer, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.